Time being 6 o'clock, I'm going to call the Board of Health meeting to order. All members are present. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. The first item on the agenda is announcements in the Health Department. Before I do that, I do want to, obviously, Chris isn't with us tonight. Chris will be out for a couple of weeks with some things going on. So those things will be transferred over to Lindsay and Eddie for the time being. I'm sure Lindsay will cover some of that, but please understand as we kind of figuring out just what we're doing and how things are going, although it's been incredibly smooth so far. Just maybe a bump here or there or sort those things out. But Lindsay, I'll turn it over to you to give announcements and elaborate on that if you need to.
Absolutely. So like Aaron said, while Chris is out, all of the business of the health department will continue to run as usual, being covered by both Eddie and myself. And then there is mutual aid coverage already in place, mutual aid agreement rather, coverage in place should myself or Eddie not be available. That's been established. I will be out of the office for a little bit after I'm having a small little knee surgery at the end of the week. And so I am available by phone and email, but I will be off my feet for a little bit of time. Again, everything is going to continue to run as operated. Eddie will take over for a bit, and then I will be back, and then we'll get Chris back. While I'm not here, Eddie will cover the meetings. And as far as the swap shop being open, please just check social media for the hours. If you don't have social media, please give the office a call. It's going to be dependent on what we have for staffing in the office. And then always looking for volunteers to keep that open on Wednesday afternoons. Also always looking for volunteers for the compost site on Saturdays so that we can make sure that that is fully staffed all weekend. And then we are always in the office. Well, someone's always in the office during business hours. If anyone has questions, one of us is always there to answer.
Right. Thank you, Lindsay. Does the board have any questions?
Thank you, Lindsay.
You guys got this.
I have a checklist. I have a plan.
There you go.
We are all set. All of the functions out through the middle of July have been figured out what's going on, who's doing what and when. So.
Yeah, I'll re-emphasize what a few have already said, but thank you. I know you guys are taking this on unexpectedly, and I'm sure you're going to do great. So appreciate everything you're doing. With that, we'll roll into the rest of our agenda for this evening. First, we will begin our discussion and action items specifically on animal and stable regulations. So emailed out, everybody should have received a copy of the current regulations as well as the regulations from Rockland and Whitman. There's not a copy here of these just because of how much paper and among other things we didn't get a chance to get those printed, but they were sent to you on Monday last week. Where we kind of left off the previous discussion on this was to maybe reevaluate where we were at in terms of how we were approaching this. We passed the $40 stable fee at town meeting, which is something that's required by Mass General Law, so that's in place. We know we need to take that into consideration. The suggestion from the animal control officer was to move more towards what Whitman has, which is this barn permit. It just says the type of animal and the quantity. That seems to be just about sufficient for what we would probably need, because we just need to know what kind of animals are in the town and how many. I don't believe this board was very interested in the past in setting much restriction for types of animals and things of that nature. We do not have an exotic animal heavy community, and that, large like farmland or anything like that. So we didn't feel that we needed to do anything very great here. So I guess the question to the board and the discussion point for today is that the route we still want to go? Are there certain things we want to explore more on? Do we want to take the animal regulations we've had and toss them out the window? What kind of conversation do we think this should take moving forward?
When Joe was here, Joe Kenny, I think I agree with him and what you're saying, that we do need to keep it kind of simplified, because we are just looking, he talked about even just chickens, like people might have ducks or geese, or it becomes so much more to it, and there's so much nuances, and there's a niche for everything. And then exotic animals and game animals, and that's also all regulated by Massachusetts already. So,
Right.
you know, we don't need to worry about who owns, you know, the tiger. That's restricted already. So I'm up for keeping it as simple as possible, particularly because we're kind of playing behind a little bit, you know, asking people who already have all these things to let us know. So making it simple and not making it seem as bureaucratic, I think, is really helpful, for sure. As someone who's gonna have to fill that out, I would like it simple.
I agree.
Great, okay.
I read somewhere that there was a case by case, because I know roosters are a huge problem in a neighborhood. And that's come up many times before, not only with this board, but with other boards. Roosters make a lot of noise. And chickens do attract rodents. And there are certain areas in this town, but I did read one of the regulations did have like a stipulation or like a caveat, if you would, whereupon the board could take it on a case-by-case basis. For example, if an area of town was a little bit more prone to having rodents because of other geographically desirable things for the rodents, then you might want to limit them in that area. And I think that's how I took that one line to mean that you could have a case-by-case. You could have an open door there for this to not be a problem for the rest of the neighborhood.
So I think my only concern with that is, and Joe brought this up too, is one, my hens are louder than a rooster. They just don't do it at 4 a.m. But my hens love to let you know when they've laid an egg at 2 p.m, and you can hear them from one street over. We do have a noise ordinance in place, and a lot of people saying no to roosters means people can't raise their own chickens, raise their own show chickens. That kind of, there is an industry there that we would be limiting by saying no to roosters in this town. I get that they can be annoying, but we already have a noise ordinance. My other concern with, I don't think I read the case by case so much as if a place is prone to rats, I live behind Deanne's and Mary Lou's. I would be a place prone to rats, but I don't have rats even though I have a lot of chickens, but my people across the way do because of dumpsters. So could they not have chickens across the street because they're near dumpsters? I feel like that starts to get too nitty gritty. And I also think that if I read it as case by case, as if someone is not taking care of the space, because there are also lots of properties around town that have lots of hiding places for rats that have nothing to do with chickens. So I don't think we should be limiting it in any way. If you want to have them, have them. It's something that our grandparents had, our parents had. Same with goats, like all these things I think people should have access to, and we shouldn't limit it unless it becomes a problem. But then that becomes like a trash and other problem. And I wouldn't restrict it by an overlay or like a community or
I
part of
was
a
just
community.
asking for an open door to that, because if somebody does have them and doesn't take care of them, and then the whole neighborhood has got a rat situation, and the whole neighborhood were to come before the board, I don't know what the wordage would be. I'd love to be able to have an opportunity to be able to answer the whole
I
neighborhood.
would take it the same as if there was like a derelict
Yeah, well,
house or
Yeah.
shed.
I mean, I think we
Yeah.
could also, you know, if we're building
There's
out
probably something already
regulations
there.
for this, I mean, this has no verbiage on it. We would probably be creating something from scratch to
Right.
do this. It's probably a one-page thing. We could include something in there that has an appeal process or something if we wanted to, but I mean, I think in terms of like a nuisance, I mean, we already have to investigate nuisances. So
Right.
if there's a nuisance, that's gonna get reported to the Board of Health, or the health agent, it's gonna get investigated appropriately.
Right.
And if we find there's a public health thing that's causing that problem, then we're gonna address it.
Right,
I mean,
regardless
I
of
think
it is-
that's kind of in place
And-
without
right.
being said, which is
If
good,
helpful.
and helpful in that case, I would agree.
If I'm able to quickly chime in, the
Please.
big thing about backyard chickens, especially right now, is it's not the bureaucratic keeping track of who has what and how many. It is because of avian flu.
Oh, no, yeah.
And so that we, and so that.
Terrified every day when I go out there.
So that if there is a bigger problem,
Yeah.
that we can notify and educate
100%.
residents.
I love the tracking. I'm very much
Yes.
have a lot of things already in
Yep.
place. And this is not just because I own them. I want to make sure that we don't become a suburb that's so close to farms that we're limiting people's opportunities to provide for
And
themselves.
so with the same thing with the question about rats and stuff like that, if it became a problem, you know, our office has always been education first. And so if a neighborhood did have an issue, it would be going out and speaking to, you know, property owners and educating, you know, what can we do? Is it storing
Preventive
food in a in a
Right, that would be the
airtight?
case-by-case basis.
It would
Yeah.
be education and then,
Go from there.
good.
Cool.
Once you start implying additional regs, it's a slippery slope.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I could have an unkept house and unkept trash outside and create an issue with rats on my own without any livestock. So
Mhm.
I think when it's a problem, it follows the right avenue, comes to the office, they get educated, and it's a case-by-case basis then.
So what I maybe would suggest that we do is, maybe work with Lindsay, we'll create our own version of this with the included verbiage of the stables. Take a look at that, and I don't see, if we're just gonna do this, do we even really need to adopt a regulation? Maybe not. We could just say, this is the way we permit in this town.
Yeah,
There's no necessary thing there, and the stable fee is already associated into the bylaws, so we don't necessarily have to pass anything if we're not gonna do anything other than require this. That being said, if we are gonna have a cost, we may wanna include something in writing there, so
We'll
we'll need to
figure
work
that
on
out,
that.
yeah.
But maybe we start with that square one, figure out what that looks like, and then build it out from there.
I like that idea, yeah, because we kind of brought this up along the lines of, we realized we haven't been doing anything with stables, but also we do want to keep track of
Right.
who, Joe Kenny especially was like, there's a pig that always gets loose, I'd like to know where it lives, so I don't have to ask everybody around who owns this pig. He could just
Yeah.
look it up and
Right.
return the pig to its.
Yeah, and we'll probably wanna
spot.
define even like what's a barn animal. Well, I don't really care how many dogs you have, that's licensed a different way. I don't care how many cats you have, that's not what we're looking for.
Right,
But, you know, chickens, hens, whatever.
And if
That's a
you're tracking, if
different
there's an issue in a certain specific location in the town, then you know who has what and where,
Yeah.
and you can warn them,
Right.
hey, look at, we're running into this is what we're seeing.
Yeah.
If you're concerned, we'll
Then my emergency management side, it also preps me for how many
Yes.
trailers I'm requesting when we have to move everyone out.
So, all right, why don't I work with Lindsay? Let's get something drafted up, we'll send it to the board, and this will just continue as a discussion for the next meeting.
perfect.
Wonderful. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Discussion on private well regulations. Actually, I think this is pretty brief. So technically, we finished that review last year, and then it fell off the face of the earth. So we're bringing that back up just because we would like to, or at least we had liked to have moved it forward to town council for review, but it never got there. Something came up, whatever, town meeting, something happened, we didn't get to it. So we want to push that forward, but I want the consent of the board to do so before we do that. We are a different board, wanted everyone to take a chance to look at those. Those are essentially the model regulations. I don't believe we made any changes, or we made very small wording changes. The ones that we already have in place are essentially the same ones. They just have a few updates based on, you know, I think PFAS is included in there now.
The language was just easier to
Exactly.
read.
It was, the format was a little
bulleted.
bit easier.
Yeah.
It's generally the same regulation though. When we move forward to town council, that doesn't mean we're approving it right away, it just means it's been approved. So as long as the board's all right with me doing that, we can take it back and then look at it again once it's approved. That was why it's on here to
Perfect.
ask. Okay.
Do you need a motion for that?
And if we wanna make one, I can also just take.
the
pen
language
out.
is definitely cleaned up real nice. Nice
Yeah.
job.
All right,
Did we just make your job easier?
Yeah, you did.
And the PFAS is
appreciate
coming
that.
down from private well PFAS is coming down from several different other angles as well, so.
yes, and I know
Covers it.
I was in here the other day, we were asked about it as well, so the fact that it's, gonna get covered in that regulation, I think is gonna be a huge help for everyone. All right, so seeing no objections to that, I'm just gonna go ahead and get that over to Greg.
Perfect.
Once we get a response back, we can look at that as a team and, move forward. Hopefully, unlike tobacco regulations, we don't have to send it back 6 times. All right, moving on, vote to approve the minutes of May 6th. Everybody should have a copy of those.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from Monday, May 6th.
Motion approved by Katie, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Susan. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? They are passed, approved. All right, public comment? Thank you, Ellen. Correspondence. Does the board or the health department have any correspondence to share?
I have nothing.
None? Okay. With that, that is the end of our agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Katie, do I have a
I'll
second? Second by Jason. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.